Guys, and welcome to another geography episode. Today we're going to look at section B of your final question paper. Now in section B we're going to look at question 3 and 4, and it's regarding settlement geography and economic geography. But let's just get straight into it. Now the first question that we're going to have a look at is regarding settlement, and it's question 3.1. Study figure 3.1 and match the descriptions below to the labels. Now, our descriptions over there, our labels is urbanization, CBD, regeneration, invasion, there's a transition zone, gentrification taking place. Obviously, there's the rural towns over there that focus on primary activities, rural urban migration. Now, a couple of clues explaining to you what's happening. As you can see, I believe this is people moving from the rural areas to urban areas, maybe because of push and pull factors. But let's quickly go and find out. So the first question is the movement of people from the rural areas to the cities. Now, if we go back to this diagram figure over here, there's the rural settlements. People move to the urban areas. What do we call it? It's rural-urban migration. Rural-urban migration. Okay, keep in mind, when this happens, usually because of the push and pull factors taking place between the two areas. Now, the movement of people from cities to rural areas, so that's people moving away from urban areas to rural areas. And let's quickly go and have a look at the diagram over there. If you can see over here. So people move from the urban areas to the rural areas, and the correct answer will be counter-urbanization. That will be the correct answer. Urbanization. Okay. A term that describes the physical growth of a city. Let's quickly go back to our diagram. As you can see, so it means that these areas are getting bigger. So this is your urban area situated over there, from there to there. And as you can see, when it moves into rural areas, it's urban expansion. So it's the physical growth of the city, the urban area itself. Okay. 3.1.4, an area of decay on the outskirts of the CBDs. Usually it's areas that look like slums where crime is high and where a lot of illegal people live, and the landlords don't look after their property. And what zone is that? That's that transition zone. Okay, even though it doesn't look very nice, but the property value is still very high, like we discussed in our theory section. So it's the transition zone. It's just outside the CBD. Okay, 3.1.5 refers to the modernization of old houses by wealthy people. A very good example is Maboneng precinct in Johannesburg CBD, just on the outside of Johannesburg CBD. Many old buildings have been bought by foreign investors, and they make them look pretty, and people tend to move over there, and that whole process is known as gentrification. For instance, in Jeppe Town in Johannesburg. Okay, 3.1.6, a feature that prevents urban sprawl, and that will be, it means that the urban areas are getting bigger. As you can see, there's basically the rural green belt separates the rural areas from the urban areas, so the green belt prevents urban sprawl. Okay, and 3.1.7, a renovation of buildings to reduce migration and improve the urban environment. So obviously to improve the urban environment, what can we do is regeneration. And where can you find it over there? The CBD regeneration. We want people to stay in the CBD. Now, basically what happened in Johannesburg, a lot of people moved away from the CBD. The CBD is actually decentralized, for instance, to Sandton. So what do people do? They invest more money, many companies, and what they do, as you can see, renovation of the buildings to reduce the migration, to improve the urban environment. And that is known as regeneration. And our last question, the percentage increase of people living in the cities, that is not urban growth, but that's urbanization. Okay. Get familiar with these concepts. Very importantly, if you look at your textbook, you will see the concepts with definitions explaining each and one of these concepts. And you're going to get every single question is going to start with short answer questions like this, where you need to be able to define the concepts. Let's quickly have a look at our second short questions over there. 3.2, choose the correct word from the given in brackets. Now 3.2.1, the dispersal of industries away from a core area is known as decentralization. Because basically what happens, we get dispersed of them, industries are moving away, maybe because of too much pollution, maybe because of too much congestion taking place in that certain area. So they place the industry somewhere else. Okay, an initiative that promotes industrialization along major roads are known as spatial development initiatives. And that's the SDIs that we usually refer to. For instance, the Maputo corridor. Okay, next to a major transport network like the N4. 3.2.3, industries that are located between the raw material and the customer is known as bridge industries. So bridge is your correct answer over there. An oil refinery will be classified definitely as a heavy industry. Where do you find your light industries? Usually just around your CBD. Where do you find your heavy industries? Usually on the outskirts, close to the rural areas, because they need to be close to very important transport networks, and they need to be far away from residential areas because of the amount of pollution, noise pollution and air pollution they can create. Okay, a food processing factory is a primary or secondary activity, and that's definitely a secondary activity. Now, processing is taking the food and changing it into a product. Now, for instance, what can I use? Let's say, for instance, the farmer farming the crop, planting the seeds is the primary activity. Now, we're taking the crop once it's harvested and they turn it into bread. That's food processing. That's a secondary activity taking place over here. Okay. 3.2.6, the sector of the economy that's associated with research and development. Now, the research is a dead giveaway, and that's quaternary activities. Now, remember, tertiary activities are services being provided. So the correct answer over here is quaternary activities. Now, if we quickly look at 3.2.7, a coal-fired power station, right, is raw material or market orientated? Definitely raw material, because if you think of coal, it's already a raw material. So if you look at the power station, it relies on the raw coal to be able to process what's needed, in this case electricity. So your correct answer over there is raw material. Okay, let's quickly continue with our answers and see what we have over here. Figure 3.3 depicts various types of rural settlements. Now, if you just quickly have a look before we're going to answer the questions. Now, what is a rural settlement? Let's just quickly define a rural settlement. Is usually where we focus on primary activities, for instance, farming, fishing, mining, or forestry. Okay. Now, we know that rural settlements can come in different shapes. And but classified as a settlement, obviously an amount of people living over there. For instance, such as a hamlet, a village. Okay, a town is immediately an urban settlement. And then we can also go and have a look at the pattern. So they can be nucleated or they can be dispersed. And if you look at C over here, look at the rural settlement, there's a road, that looks like a linear pattern. If you look at B, it looks like they're clustered together. If you look at A, it looks kinda, if you look at it, isolated. So this is just some of the clues I get looking at my diagram on figure 3.3. Okay, and as you can see, it's a linear pattern over there. At A, it looks isolated and very close to a transport. Very close, that looks like an isolated pattern. That looks like a linear pattern. That looks like a nucleated pattern over here at B. And as you can see, they are very close situated to a major transport route. And again, they are situated close to a water resource. Now let's quickly go and answer the questions that follows. The first question, what evidence suggests that B is a dry point settlement? Now let's quickly go and have a look at B. Where is B? As you can see, there's B, there's the river. Now what is a dry point settlement? It's usually on a high-lying area because when the river is in a flood, they do not live in the floodplain. So as you can see, they live quite far away from the river. And that's the reason, because they want to stay dry. That's why the reason we refer to it as a dry point settlement. So the correct answer over there, it's situated on a mountain slope. As you can see, it's quite far away from the river, an upper slope, far from the water source. Okay. Now, if you look at question 3.3.2, state 2 social advantages of living in settlement B. Now, let's just quickly have a look at settlement B. As you can see, they are definitely nucleated. They're living close together. In comparison to settlement A, it's isolated, far from everything else. Now, we already established it's a dry point settlement because it's far from the river. But what's the advantage of people living close together? Now, this can be a hamlet or it can be a village. Okay, definitely not the isolated farmstead. So what's the advantages of people living together, close together? Now, first of all, the first one we can mention, the social interaction. They're not isolated. Now, second reason, especially in South Africa these days, is being an isolated farmer is extremely dangerous because of all the farm murders taking place. So definitely safety, I just want to get my spelling correct. Safety and security are vitally important. Now, easy access in case of an emergency, so we can write there easy access to help in case there's an emergency. Now what they can do as well, they can share ideas and they can share equipment. So there's quite a number of advantages of people living in a settlement such as B. They can share ideas and they can share their equipment. Obviously, it's going to be much safer if there's an emergency, they are close to someone, and there's social interaction between them. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at the next question. Refer to settlement C. Identify the settlement shape at C. But let's go and identify settlement C. Okay, as you can see, there's settlement C. If you look at the settlement, it's in a linear shape because they are situated next to one another. So that answers our first question. Let's quickly go and have a look at our first question. Identify the settlement shape. It's a linear shape. Okay, we already established that when we looked at the figure the first time. Suggest a reason for the elongated, long and narrow shape of the individual farms in settlement C. Now let's quickly go and have a look at our figure again. Now first of all, the reason why they are situated in a straight line or like in a linear shape is because they are situated next to the road. So it might be because they are farming perishable goods. So it's much easier for them to transport their goods close to the market. Another reason why settlement C is over there, what can happen as well, they are limited to the availability of the land. So they want to use as much land as possible to be able to farm their product. So let's quickly go and fill in the correct answer over there. Okay, the farmers need access to the road. And limited by the availability of flat land. Okay, if we quickly look at question number C, explain why the farms at C are likely to experience soil erosion. Now, if we look at the farms at C, why do you think they're going to experience soil erosion? Now, as you can see, there's a rain cloud above over there, as you can see over there, and if you look at their farmland, it's been built upslope with a steep gradient. Now, why do you think they will experience soil erosion? First of all, they should not farm on steep slopes because it's going to create runoff. And if they practice the wrong farming methods, what's going to happen with the topsoil? It's going to be washed away. Okay, and if they practice monoculture, planting the same crop over and over, it means the soil is going to lose its nutrients. So it makes it even easier for soil erosion to take place. So let's quickly go and answer that question over there. Explain why the farms at C are likely to experience soil erosion. And I've mentioned farming is practiced on a steep slope. Okay. Now, as you can see, there was cloud cover, it showed precipitation. The heavy rain will increase surface runoff. And there's no trees being planted to trap the runoff. Because what does the trees do? It creates infiltration. It creates underground runoff. So the trees will help to stop soil erosion. And what we can say as well, the removal of natural vegetation as well. The removal of the natural vegetation basically increase that soil erosion will take place because it's deforestation take place. And lastly, what we can mention as well, if they practice monoculture. If the farmer do not practice the correct methods of farming, it can create monoculture, planting the same crops, and that can lead to soil erosion as well. Our next question, 3.3.3, we will have a look at question 3.3 directly after the break. Don't go anywhere.